What's going on, my planting people? I'm Lithius and this is Roots Ready. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you a 2-year update on this plant right here. This is none other than my Spiritus Sancti, the Philodendron Spiritus Sancti. There's so much to talk about, but we're going to go all the way back to the beginning and tell you how far me and this plant have come in that time. Feel free to catch up on all of the old videos that I've done on this plant because I've been sure to document the entire journey from then till now. So a little over a year ago, I believe it was May 2022, I purchased this plant. And when I got this plant, I'm telling you, it was just tiny. When I saw this plant online, at the time, it only had one baby leaf on it. So you can tell that this was one of the first leaves that this plant had ever produced. So I purchased this plant. And to my surprise, by the time I got that plant delivered to me, I saw that it actually had another leaf on the way. So the plant showed some really good signs. It was really, really positive. And you know, this was the first time I've ever purchased something as risky as this, because I don't know if you know the story of the Philodendron Spiritus Sancti, but this plant was a high ticket item, a very big ticket item. This plant was very, very rare in the plant collecting hobby, and that's because this plant was extremely rare in nature. I think at the time reports showed that there were only about eight of these plants left in the wild, and they were like a secret and nobody knew where they were. And there were a few that made it into cultivation. So that meant that if you wanted to get your hands on this plant, the Spiritus Sancti, you had to be spending over $20,000 US dollars at the time to get your hands on this plant. Of course, with philodendrons, they can be propagated and sold on. So over time, the price started to fall and fall and fall. And when I first sort of saw this plant online, I think it was going for about £4,000. So quite expensive. But whilst plants were still selling at that price, I saw this one. It was being sold for about, I think I got it for about $300 thereabouts. So still quite expensive, and by far the most amount of money I've ever spent on a plant, and probably it will be the most I will ever spend on a plant. I don't see myself doing that again anytime soon. But anyway, got the plant. I did what I had to do. I took care of it. Definitely go see my videos that will be a lot more in depth in terms of the care that I gave this plant at a very early stage. But I did what I had to do, and the plant started growing, and it was growing actually quite quickly, a lot quicker than I expected. When the plant got to a good size, I decided to repot it into something a bit more substantial. I did a whole video on that, so definitely go have a look at that. And the plant was just non-stop. I had it growing in my grow tent over there, and it was growing a leaf or two every month. So it was a very, very fast grower, I thought anyway. So with that, and knowing the risk that I took in terms of buying this plant, and if it died, anything could happen, I decided to propagate the plant. And I had these two absolutely gorgeous plants. The top cutting was chef's kiss. It was lovely. It was nice and big and juicy. And I did contemplate about keeping both plants, but I decided in the end that I'm going to let the top cutting go, kind of try to recoup some of that money that I spent invested in the plant. I didn't make all of it back, but you know, it's okay because I wanted the plant anyway. So in fact, you know, when you work it out, the plant ended up costing slightly less than what I bought it for. It was a big decision, but I made it, decided to sell the plant on, and I'm sure somebody is really loving that because it was lovely. The leaves were nice and juicy and big, and they were getting really nicely mature. So I'm sure the plant is doing amazing. I haven't checked in with that person because I sold it on eBay. But in any case, I was left with this bottom cutting. So the cutting that I kept hold of was the mother plant. So this was the bottom cutting. So it was very well rooted, and I thought that it would start to grow a lot quicker than it did. For whatever reason, it didn't. And since last winter, since I last propagated this, and since I propagated that plant, I must admit, there's not much to say, which is why it's taken me 9 months to release another video on this. So when you last saw this plant, I think the last leaf was probably this one over here, and there's not much change. You can tell it's that leaf because there is that signature little hole in it, and that was it. The plant was sort of settling down, I believe. I think we probably went into the winter, so that probably slowed the growth by quite a lot. Another change that I've made is I've actually removed the plant from the grow tent that gets consistently high humidity. This thing, probably the lowest the humidity would drop to is maybe 55, 60. And in the evenings when the lights go off, it skyrockets to 90, maybe close to 100, especially if I've just watered that day. So I decided to take this plant out because the Philodendron Spiritus Sancti is quite a leathery leaf plant. I decided to try my luck and take it out and grow it in my regular household humidity levels. Now, I think the combination of that and the fact that it's just come out of winter meant that the plant was very, very slow to do anything. And the first signs of growth, I saw a new little leaf bud poking its head out. I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, we're gonna have a new leaf. It's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be bigger than the last one. But let me show you what the plant produced. The plant was literally mocking me and produced, produced this. I had high hopes for this because it was a long petiole, and this is what was produced. Oh my days. So I thought, okay, I don't know what that is, what that means. But it was the first leaf the plant had put out in months and months and months. But then very, very soon after, we're talking about maybe a couple of weeks, 3 weeks or whatever, the plant started to produce a new leaf, and this is the result of that leaf today. Believe it or not, this leaf is still growing. It is still soft. You can see that it's still a very light green compared to the others. When it hardens off, that's when the growth really stops. But this thing is massive. It is huge. Look at the lobes on it. This is a signature Spiritus Sancti leaf. Look at that. Even the top cutting that I had, I don't believe the leaves were as big as this. This is the biggest leaf I've ever had on my Spiritus Sancti. Yes, it is a little bit damaged, just a little bit. And that is because when it started to grow, it actually hit one of my cactus, and yeah, it sort of impaled itself twice. And this is why I had to sort of stake it up here. And because of that, I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but the petioles really twisted and whatnot, but the leaf is still doing fine. It would just be interesting to see what the next leaf looks like. I can't see any signs of any new leaves coming out just yet, but it does look fine. It looks okay. I really should have waited maybe another couple of weeks to let this thing harden off, but I was still excited. I just wanted to show you guys what this plant is doing. Look at it. Oh my goodness. It's such a shame that this plant is tucked away and hidden in a corner where you can't really see it. I'll be doing a bit of a rejig, so stay tuned for that, of this area, trying to sort of pull out the plants so, you know, it can look a bit better. You can appreciate the plants a lot more. So that's to come. Stay tuned for that. That might even be the next video after this. We'll see. We'll see what happens. In terms of other updates, I don't think there's too much to sort of talk about. The plant is starting to show signs that it's really well rooted in there, which is really, really good. One of the things I was really nervous about is when I repotted this plant into this terracotta pot, the plant originally came in sphagnum moss, and because it had rooted so well in that sphagnum moss, I really struggled to remove the moss from the roots, because that would actually have meant that I probably would have lost close to 80%, maybe 90% of the roots, because I found at the time that the roots were quite fibrous and they broke off quite easily, so quite fragile. So as you try to take off the moss, they would break. So what I did is I just sort of plopped it in here and put in some really, really well draining soil mix in here. So at first I was really nervous about how I watered. I was taking my time. I wasn't doing too much to the plant. I wasn't really trying to give it a good deep soak. I just wanted to make sure that the roots had sort of established outside of that moss before I did so. And I think that's worked, because as I showed you, you've got that root at the bottom there, but also there are some roots even trying to crawl out of the pot. And I'm trying to figure out the best way to show you guys this, but right here where my finger is, this little thing here, that's a root that's trying to climb out of the pot. And the stem itself is starting to produce some aerial roots as well, which is why I sort of placed some moss around this. But gosh, is it hard to keep this moss moist. You water it today, by tomorrow, maybe even before then, the same day, it's already dry. I think I'll have to employ my technique of using plastic wrap or cling film to sort of keep the water in there. But even that only works to a certain extent. I might be able to extend that by a day, so 2 days of moisture. And I don't want to be watering this because I don't want to keep the soil consistently moist, because that could spell root rot and the death of this plant, and that is not what we want, is it? In terms of the care I've been giving this plant, it's really been the same. Nothing, I don't think anything has really changed apart from the amount of water. So as I said, I watered it quite lightly at the start, but now I've changed that. I go through, I give it a good soak, make sure I see that water come out the bottom into the saucer, and I'll probably leave it in there for a little bit. If it's only a little bit of water, I leave it in there, and then it's kind of then gets reabsorbed back into the soil or even into the terracotta pot. And the plant seems to be doing fine with that. If it's lots of water, I will throw it out. But sometimes before I do that, I then pour it back into the plant, see if it absorbs any more water, and then whatever's left the second round, I will chuck out. So that's one of the things that I do. The fertilizing, I will say that I've increased the fertilizing in my plants, not just this one, but in all of them. So whereas before in the growing season, I'll probably fertilize every other watering, which is what I used to do, you know, last year and beyond. What I do now is I fertilize, or I try to fertilize every watering, and I just use the recommended dosage on the bottle for my soil plants and the same for my semi-hydro plants. And that seems to be working because of just how much this plant has sized up. It has really, really sized up. The next leaf, I think, is going to be so impressive. It really is. I can't wait for that. In terms of lighting, literally the plant sits just here. So this is the euphorbia. There is another cactus here behind, and the plant just sits in that corner over there. So quite close to the east facing window. And that's it. It doesn't get anything else. I don't supplement any humidity. I don't supplement any light. The plant is doing okay. I haven't had any pest pressures, not yet. Any pest pressures at all. I have noticed that I have seen some spider mites in one of my other philodendrons that was in my grow tent. So I need to sort that out because I would hate for this plant to come down with spider mites. I find that spider mites really do love philodendron anyway, and this is the type of philodendron that they love. This leathery kind of leaf, because I have my mame loved by spider mites, and my gloriosum, which was slightly different, it's more sort of velvety, that was also loved by spider mites. So I want to be careful that I don't have to deal with that with this plant. So I'm going to try to do something about the other spider mites. But as for this plant, it's never come down with spider mites, so I'm really happy about that. Somebody recently asked me if I had my Spiritus Sancti on a moss pole. I think they've seen elsewhere that people have grown their Philodendron Spiritus Sancti on moss poles, and they asked me why I didn't. And I thought about that, and I'm not sure. So I think the next step for me is I think I'm gonna have to try to put this thing on a moss pole, because it's only so far that you can sort of stack the soil up the stem of this plant, because I'm really concerned. I don't want any sort of stem rot or anything like that. I think a moss pole would be suitable, preferable even. But what I don't want to do is put a moss pole in here and damage the roots. So I think that's something that I'm going to look to do, but I'm going to wait until this plant is super well rooted before even attempting that. As I said, one of the difficulties with mounting is that it's very hard to keep the moss moist. So what I might do is employ the, you know, like when people get the plastic cup or whatever and they put soil in it. I think that might have to be a method that I sort of trial, but I think that would definitely help. Although some of the lower nodes have produced aerial roots, the last few nodes haven't. It remains to be seen how much more growth a moss pole could produce. So I'm definitely up for it. It's something that I am going to do. Just wait to see how it goes. Wait for the plant to get even more rooted, as I said, and then I'll definitely give that a go once I've repotted this into a slightly larger pot, because I don't want to damage any of the roots. So that's something that I will be doing soon. But honestly, overall, this plant is quite easy to look after. My biggest concerns was just making sure that the plant survives because of how rare it was at the time that I got it. Right now, this plant is really cheap. There's an amazing company called Eden Labs. They sell tissue cultured Spiritus Sancti for like £20 now, compared to what I paid for it. It's insane, right? It's about the same size as the one that I got originally. So it's just insane how much the price has changed. So if you want to get one, this is definitely the time. It's a very easy plant to care for. I haven't had any concerns. It's been a dream. I've even managed to propagate it. If I didn't, this plant would be massive, right? It would be huge. But we are where we are. I would have 100% recommend it right now, as the price is low and it keeps dropping. Keep your eye out for the Spiritus Sancti, because honestly, it is a lovely plant. Just look at those lobes, those pendant shaped leaves, just absolutely gorgeous. So lovely. But that's it. This is my 2-year plus update on the Spiritus Sancti. As I said, it's been quite slow since the propagation, but things have really picked up now. And I'm excited to see what the next leaf looks like and to see how big I can get this plant to grow. Red leaf exotics, if I can get a mother plant the size of that one, I'll be in the game. But yes, that's all for me. Do let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on this Spiritus Sancti. Is it the plant for you? Now that the hype has died, do you still think this is a plant that's worth getting? Or do you think, you know, the Philodendron billieti does it better? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear it and discuss it more with you there. But that's it. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, keep planting.